grew up a fucking screw up. Tie my shoe up. Wish they was newer. Damn, need something newer. In love with the baddest.
Somebody help a sister out.
Come on, if you have
There we go.
producer.
I think we got it.
You want to answer that, don't you?
Yeah, baby.
I bet it's just killing you seeing the soft glow just inches away.
I got you.
Someone wants to tell you something or ask you something.
Coach, I want to show you.
Oh, come on. Answer it already.
Going to class, though.
Okay. It just say adding.
So we're clear. That wasn't my fault.
Right here in my pocket.
Next time, ignore your inner voice. Don't text and drive.
Stay up on what's happening here at Power. We've got new shows, new guests, and new events that help us connect with the community. Follow us.
Y'all
on
bear with me
Facebook
as I
and
add
Instagram at Power
Tasha on.
108.9. You can also go
It say right here, just say adding.
power1089.com to get all of the updated news and happenings here at Power. Thanks for listening.
So hit approve, right? Hold on, y'all. We having some technical difficulties. Come on, tech girl. I got the tech girl here, y'all. It say add it, but it won't add. That's not her. That's not her.
Always thinking ahead.
Hey, let's do your intro and then take a break and then come back and bring her on.
Okay. You work with me. What you say?
Come on. You ready?
Born that way. I got a lot of papers today, y'all. Lots of papers. Oh, I ain't show you that.
You ready?
Okay, so this is who I want to bring on.
You ready?
Yeah. I can multitask.
I've been knowing you for a minute. No, you can't.
It just say sent. Hola, hola, hola. You are listening to Let's Talk with the one and only Christeria Lynn on Power 108.9. I am sitting here with Cordell.
Hey, what's going on?
Cordell somewhere else, boy. Where you at, Cordell?
I
What
know
you reading, Cordell?
I'm reading.
Attorney at law. He all in the papers, y'all.
I'm all in the papers.
All in the papers. But today we are going to be talking about a young man named Jamie Carson, who was originally facing 240 years in prison. He was sentenced to 120 years in prison with no prior convictions. His sister is going to be telling us and sharing with us his story of why he is innocent. She also provided us with a lot of documents. We are trying to bring her on live, but we are having some technical difficulties. But yeah, work with us. Work with us. Work with us. We'll be right back.
What they listening to?
You are listening to Let's Talk with Christeria Lynn on Power 108.9. I promise we'll be right back, y'all. Let's get Tasha on.
He ain't got it.
Ready? Welcome back. You are listening to Christeria Lynn. Let's talk on Power 108.9. I am here with Cordell, and sorry about the issues that, well, we got Tasha on the phone, so we are going to do a phone interview versus a Facebook Live interview so she can tell us about her story, about her brother and how he's innocent. Are you there, Tasha?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Make sure they can hear also. Okay. So thanks for excuse me. Thanks for joining us, and thank you for entrusting your story and your brother's life in our hands. But first, I want to give the listeners some feedback. So Jamie Carson is Tasha's brother. He was 18 years of age when he was faced with 240 years of in prison for crimes he said he did not commit. He was in prison for 3 years before he went before Marion Superior Court Judge Patricia Guilford, who found him guilty on a bench trial, one day of a bench trial. And he was sentenced on May 10th, 1999, if I'm not mistaken. He was sentenced to 120 years in prison, spared no leniency for his crimes. He has been in prison at the Indiana State Department of Corrections since 1999, and the earliest he is eligible for parole, 2069. So I want to bring you on. This is some of the information you sent us. Some statements from him, statements from attorney. So I want you to tell your brother's story and why you think he's innocent.
Well, first off, I'd like to say I know my brother is innocent. He was only kept down at the Marion County Jail because he knew some of the people that were involved. There was other people that were actually looking for at the time that were suspects, but as soon as they heard Jamie's name, which he's a Carson, and coincidentally it was election time, they just ran with that one. They pulled out a juvenile picture of my brother and posted it on the news. He fit the description at that point in time for the person they were actually looking for. When Jamie turned himself in after seeing himself on the news, he looked absolutely nothing like the description of the assailant they were looking for. My brother had an afro and a full beard, and they were looking for someone with a little haircut and a goatee. They kept him down there for like 3 years, maybe before he even went to trial. But the bottom line is, on October 22nd, the iron that they said my brother's fingerprint was on was in the evidence room on October 22nd. The crime did not happen until October 28th. We actually have a sworn affidavit from IMPD that states this. His attorney, Hillary Oates, she actually wrote a letter stating the same thing. I just want to say that there's no way possible we can have evidence down there 6 days before a crime was even committed. And no one has had the opportunity to examine this iron, because this iron that they stated that they had my brother's print on no longer exists. It was gone 20 years ago.
Okay. So my question to you and some of the listeners. So the purpose of this interview is to provide the best interview possible. So pretty much we can prove your brother's innocent. My question to you, listening to you talking, you say he turned himself in after seeing the news. Why did he turn himself in if he wasn't actually there?
He turned himself in because they had him posted all on the news as someone who had committed all of these crimes. And he didn't want to be on the run. Like, I'm running, I'm not going to turn myself in. He fully cooperated with what he was supposed to do. So he went down there with an attorney to let them know, hey, you know, I'm not who you're looking for, but our whole entire family was calling him, telling him he needed to go down and see, you know, exactly what they were coming up with here. We couldn't fathom how they ended up with a juvenile picture of Jamie to begin with, but he was just basically cooperating.
Okay. And you said that this was motivated because his grandmother was a politician. So it was motivated. You're saying that it was motivated because of the grandmother. Can you talk about that?
I just want to say that I believe it was solely more about Jamie being a Carson because it was election time. They had gone after a few other of her grandchildren, and they had no success with that. My brother's name was barely ever mentioned. They always said Congresswoman Julia Carson's grandson. So that right there was enough for us to know it wasn't really about Jamie in the beginning, but they had to make sure that they nailed it and put the nails in the coffin for my brother.
So when you say they had gone after few other Carsons, elaborate on that to help to bring clarity of what we're dealing with.
I'm just a couple of her other grandsons in previous years. They had tried to say they did some things, not criminal. I think it was something with them cheating on a test or something for the police department. I'm not really clear on the details with that, but I do know they were out to get a Carson if they had to. I have two brothers that are Carsons, and my other brother was actually, when we went into the trial and they read off the list of suspects, my brothers are day and night. They look nothing alike. Both of my brothers' names were on the list. Okay? But they went with Jamie. So I don't know. I just feel like his name was enough motivation for them to do what they done for my brother.
I have a question. This is Cordell Roll. Give us a little background. Give us a little background of the actual events that took place and how this all unfolded. We know that you believe that your brother is innocent, but what we don't know is what got him into a situation where he's, potentially seeking 240 years when they begin to charge him. What were the events that led to this? Because many of our guests are from around the country, but we're not, a lot of us may not be from Indianapolis, or Indiana, where the congresswoman and your brother, we're familiar with those names. So give us a background of the story itself.
Well, before you do that, hold on one second. Sorry,
No,
I
it's
wanted
okay.
to interject. So I forgot to read this part, but on May 10th, 2002, Jamie was convicted of several crimes. He was convicted of, I always mess it up, 2 counts of criminal is a deviant, 50 years for each crime. It was 100 years. He was also convicted of robbery with serious bodily injury and sentenced to 50 years for that crime. Attempted robbery with serious bodily injury and sentenced to 50 years for that crime. And 2 counts of criminal confinement and sentenced to 5 years for 1 count and 10 years for the other count. So I just wanted the listeners to know exactly what he was in jail for. So go ahead, Tasha, and share.
Okay. Before I answer his question, can I respond? I want to say something about these charges. My brother, they charged him with like serious bodily injury. Now, mind you, he had a bench trial and they presented absolutely no medical records, but when the medical records were presented, they were normal. These people were not burned. I believe they were supposed to have had 3rd-degree burns. They were actually in court, and when asked by the attorney, well, what happened to these burns that you had? And one of the victims said that's what a good stick of cocoa butter will do. That was pretty amazing in my eyes. But back to what you were asking me. Are you asking me how his name ended up in this? Is that what you're asking for?
I'm trying to figure out the story itself. Like, we're just jumping in the middle of your brother being innocent, but we don't really know what he's innocent of or even being accused of. So those that are familiar with the story, or I'm sorry, those of us that are not familiar with the background of the story, can we kind of get a sense of laying the foundation where the injustice kind of began? We know that he was accused of these heinous crimes, but can we get a background of, who are the victims were, how did his name get involved, things like that to kind of build up to the injustice?
Okay, I don't actually have the victims' names in front of me.
Not necessarily the names, just the background of the story itself. We don't need to know the names.
So
my brother,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Tell the story.
Okay. I mean, basically, he was just accused of breaking into someone's home and tying them up and burning them with an iron
Mhm.
and robbing them. They never said what he took. This was basically it.
So
Um,
essentially, this was just a robbery going bad, in theory, by somebody.
yes.
Okay.
Yes, supposedly.
All right. Now let's get a little background. You said that it was some other guys that were there. He knew. Where are
Yes.
they today?
Could you repeat that?
The other people that was there at the or accused of the crime. I think some people pled guilty. It was a couple of guys pled guilty. Where are they today?
I actually believe that they are free. I know they were sentenced, they took plea bargains and got like 20 to 10.
Mm-hmm.
They were friends of my brother's, and at that time, they had a cousin, I believe his name was Rico Storms, were saying that it was Rico, but they didn't want to snitch him out per se. He actually fit the description that at the time that they were saying that Jamie, looked like at the time. Joshua Powell actually came into the courtroom, not at the bench trial, because mind you, Jamie had to have a couple of trials because they put him in two separate courtrooms. And I'm not sure if this is factual, but I believe if you have so many charges in two separate courtrooms, if you are found guilty, your sentences are non-suspendable. So he was found not guilty when Josh came into the courtroom and said that Jamie was never at any of the robberies. But at the trial that he was actually convicted in this bench trial, they sent all of the witnesses home. They didn't let anybody testify. And my brother actually had an alibi witness, but they sent her home.
All right, let's dig into that a little bit. Did the other individuals that were in testify at his trial, at Jamie's trial?
Joshua Powell testified not in this bench trial that Jamie was convicted on. No, they didn't have anybody in there except for the person that said that she got the fingerprint off of the iron. And basically, I mean, that was not much of a trial at all.
Right.
Was just him.
How did it get from a bench trial from a jury trial to a bench trial? It seemed rather odd.
It's very odd. He had a very ineffective attorney named Aaron Hayes. He thought it was in his best interest. He listened to his attorney to have a bench trial, which was absolutely insane. He should have had a jury trial because I firmly believe if he had a jury trial, he would have been found not guilty like he was in the first trial.
Right. And how old was your brother at the time making, decisions and going through the court system when the trials were going on? Give or take.
Okay, I couldn't hear you.
Give or take. How old was your brother when he was going through these trials? Like, what was his age range?
Is it maybe 20 or 21? I know he was downtown for at least 3 years. So I think he may have been like 20 years old around the time.
Okay, so I want to read this article so the listeners can understand, and then also I want to read the letter that Jamie wrote. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, so the Associated Press wrote an article on April the 14th, 2002, and I'll try to, make it as brief as possible. In Indianapolis, a judge has found a man guilty of charges that he robbed and tortured two men who prosecutors say were targeted because they were gay. Jamie C. Carson, the grandson of U.S. Representative Julie Carson, Julie Julia Carson, the 10th district, faces up to 240 years in prison after being convicted Friday of charges including robbery, criminal deviant conduct, and criminal confinement. The 20-year-old Indianapolis man was convicted of misdemeanor of carrying a handgun without a license. Prosecutors said the victims were targeted because they were gay. Deputy Prosecutor Richard Plath, he will urge Guilford to consider the factor as sentencing, which could result in a sentence enhancement of up to 20 years above the standard range prison term for each of the 4 most serious counts. There is no question that this is a hate crime. We are going to push for that as sentencing, Plath said. Indiana does not have a hate crime statute, he said, which I want to touch on. Police said Carson had 2 accomplices force the men at gunpoint to perform sex acts on each other during the robbery in the victim's Indianapolis apartment in 1999. One man was forced to drink a mixture of bleach and urine, police said. Both men were tied up and burned with a steam iron. Police say Carson's fingerprint was found on the steam iron. He has maintained that the evidence was planted by police. The Associated Press left messages seeking comments from his grandmother, Congresswoman Julia Carson, Friday night and Saturday at an office in Washington and Indianapolis. 2 other men, Brian Clark and Joshua Powell, both 20, have already pled guilty in the case and are scheduled to be sentenced next month. So, one, I want to say that Indiana, I'm not a lawyer. I missed that calling, but Cordell is, so I can't really touch on the law that much. But at the time, Indiana did not have a hate crime statute. So essentially, Cordell, talk about that.
Well, depending on the state and the federal government, and it looks like he was tried in state court. So if there's no state hate crime law and you're tried in state court, then you probably won't get those charges added. The federal government, however, can come in and charge you separately with a hate crime if they believe that the charges is not enough. And so in this particular situation, the federal government did not step in and give him extra sentencing or a trial at all, because he is doing all of state charges. So if a person is convicted, and they are serving 120 years, give or take, there's probably no need for the federal government to come in. But because of the heinousness of the actual crime itself, regardless of who did it, just the nature of the crime, anybody found guilty of that will probably do whatever the max the law has said. And it seems like Jamie got the brunt of that, being found guilty under the circumstances of the facts. So that's probably where the serious injury occurred outside of the medical records. It's just the fact that it happened. That's just touching on the legal nature of it, not necessarily saying who is innocent or who is guilty of it, meaning that somebody did something, and whoever did it whoever was found guilty of it was going to take the brunt of it. And even in political environment, with the rise of crimes against the LGBT community, and a lot of LGBT community pushing for the hate crime statute and the injustices that are usually done in that, especially in that political time, you're going to get the brunt of it. Whoever is found guilty of those types of crimes. That happens even today. That's why you have so many hate crime statutes on the rise in different states. But it is an individual state thing, and then there's an extra federal level.
So, Jamie wrote a letter. This letter is from Jamie Carson. It's dated February 11th, 2019, 12:42 p.m. Central Standard Time. Please bear with me as I try to, read this handwriting. His letter says, on October 29th, 1999, a warrant for my arrest was signed by Judge Patricia J. Guilford, being given a sworn affidavit for probable cause by Detective Michael Turner of the Marion County Sheriff's Department, which stated that Jamie C. Carson, date of birth, which I won't name, on October 28th, 1999, along with Joshua Powell and Brian Clark, did, while armed with a handgun, rob, beat, burned with a hot clothing iron, which was said to have been recovered by I don't know what this is. Maybe Shannon Anderson of the Marion County Sheriff's Department, and later given to his last name, Bartholomew of the Marion County Forensic Services Agencies for testing for fingerprints residing. Then given to Diane Donnelly of the same crime lab for identification of an alleged smudge that was somehow said to have been recovered by Bartholomew after 3 unsuccessful attempts to any indication of a fingerprint, and was said to have matched my known left thumbprint, which was collected from the files of the police department from my juvenile record. Since this time, 37 of the initial offenses for which I was accused have quietly been dismissed by the state per motion to dismiss, and after one 2-day jury trial in which a jury of my peers acquitted me of, help me out, 6 of those counts. So
Appellate counsel.
Kimberly A. Jackson appeared by the court was found to be ineffective by the Indiana Supreme Court. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble reading. Ineffective by the Indiana Supreme Court for failing to raise clearly erroneous issues on my direct appeal, December 10th, 2015.
Let me interject there, because what you have is Jamie describing in a handwritten letter, which is what we're reading, his handwriting, handwritten letter of the process. So let me just describe for those who don't understand the legal process of what's happening. So he went to trial. He had separate trials. In one of the separate trials, he was acquitted of up to, according to his writing, 37 potentially initial offenses that were either dismissed or acquitted. So when a person does a motion to dismiss, or when an attorney does a motion to dismiss, we're basically saying to the court, the state has brought all of these charges against us, and there's absolutely no evidence, or the state acted badly, so they should be dismissed for either no evidence or for some technical reason. And so in this case, his attorney, or his attorney at the time, presented that to the court, and the court dismissed most of them. And what usually happens is, when the state really wants you, they'll stack up everything that they think you did. Some of those charges most likely are just charges that would merge, or just repetitive charges, meaning that it's probably one act, but they can find 3 or 4 different statutes on that act, so they will get rid of some of them. In this case, obviously, they kept the most heinous of crimes, so they probably got rid of a lot of the petty crimes, or the crimes that were doubled in charging. The other issue is, there were some issues that he did. Obviously, he was found guilty on some charges, but he had been acquitted on others by a jury. And so now the other issue is, his case went, I guess, to appellate court. And where the appellate court, which is the appeals court, after you have a trial, you can go to state court of appeal on whatever jurisdiction in the state. And in that trial, the judges, or the appellate judges, essentially said that after reading the record, after reading the trial record, that they found that this attorney was just incompetent, so to speak. If she was in it, when an attorney is ineffective or is ineffective counsel, that just means that they haven't really just done the bare minimum of being an attorney. You should at a bare minimum, this is a reasonable expectation to give your client a reasonable, fair trial. Now I want to ask you, was his attorney a public defender, or was it a privately purchased attorney? What was the background behind that with
Which
Kimberly?
attorney are we speaking on? Because he's had a lot.
Well, we're just going by your brother's letter. So it says Miss Kimberly Jackson. So I don't know her in any way, shape, or form. Her name is just mentioned in this letter. So I'm just asking, is Miss Jackson a public defender, or was she a privately attorney that your family purchased?
I'm not really sure about that. I don't know. She may have been a public defender.
Right. And just for the record, public defenders are attorneys. A lot of times people are like, you don't have an attorney, you have a public defender. No, they are attorneys. They just sometimes are overwhelmed by the nature of the state providing the case. So they may have, probably 100 times more cases than a private attorney would have. So that may reflect some of the issues here. We don't know, but I just want to kind of give a background for the audience who may not be familiar with the legal process. And again, we can't confirm or deny, one way or the other, give an opinion on Miss Jackson's, effectiveness. We're just going by what's in Jamie's letter.
Mm-hmm. Well, I honestly believe she was a public defender.
All right.
He's had quite a few attorneys.
Let me ask you this. Where is the legal process now? Later on in his letter, he does mention that he has not exhausted his legal process, and he does have potential opportunities for appeal. So obviously he knows things that we may not know, but where do you know where he's at in the process, and also how the public may be able to help, because there may be some things that maybe somebody was there, maybe there are additional witnesses who never came forth. Maybe you just need more money for his defense fund, whatever the case may be, or maybe some defense attorney may be hearing this and may want to help. So tell us what you want to get out of this from the public and where he's at.
Well, I just really wanted people to know that, my brother was treated unfairly, and from the beginning with this whole situation, and I'm not being biased about it because it is my brother. It's just ironic to me that they don't have the evidence that they claim to have had, which convicted my brother. Yes, they had witnesses, but these witnesses were not credible at all. My brother was picked out from a photo array, not a lineup. They couldn't even look at him and see. If this man just did all this to you, it hasn't been that long. You don't know who he is? You have no idea who he is. I really don't know at this point if there's someone out there that would like to help my brother, an attorney out there that would like to help him as far as getting out of there. I don't know how many appeals he's put in, but everything that he does gets denied. And his last attorney, I gave you a letter, Christeria. I'm not sure what his name is, but he offered to help any way that he could, because the last attorney my brother had went in and said, we're walking out of the doors here. They don't have the evidence. There was absolutely no reason why I shouldn't let Amy go. And he went to meet with the prosecutor, and the prosecutor wouldn't even come out to speak with him. He sent someone else out. And after they had a conversation, members and things like that, but no one has really given anything to help. So that was pretty unsuccessful. That's why I'm on the show, because I wanted people to know this way. I also wanted to say, in the beginning of all of this, they said they had a fingerprint with a black light on it. And this a black light with a fingerprint on it. And they lost this light. And it's the same thing with this iron. Like, how coincidental do you destroy or lose evidence that no one else can examine, and then you sentence this man all of this time? I know I'm going off a little bit, but I just wanted to put that out there before I forget when this is over with. We do need a defense fund. That would be great to start one. Someone could point me in the right direction on how to do that. I would really appreciate it.
Have you looked into programs like the Innocence Project, or is there one in Indiana, that Innocence Project in Indiana? Normally, for those people that are not familiar with the Innocence Project, what they do is,
by the Innocence Project, I think it was like 3 years ago, and he sent some information to them and corresponded back and forth, but I'm not quite sure what the outcome of that was. So
Okay. Is there anything else that you want the public or the listeners to know about your brother and his innocence? Someone on Facebook asked the question, what makes her think that this happened to Jamie because of his grandmother's political status? At least his treatment in this situation. So that was a question, but if you can answer that question and anything else that you want the public to know in reference to your brother and why he's innocent.
yes, I actually saw that comment, and I guess on the outside looking in, someone might ask that question. But my brother, with everything that happened in the beginning, they never mentioned his name. It was always Congresswoman Julia Carson's grandson. I mean, in disrespect to her, because she is no longer here. But when someone doesn't even speak your name, then what other choice do you have but to believe that was what motivated it? Not to mention, it was election time. So that was a way to taint her name through Jamie. I also like to say that Jamie, they gave him a $100,000 bond. We didn't have $10,000 to get him out. I believe when you give someone a bond, it's by some type of matrix system, and they take a lot of things into consideration. Like, they made it impossible for us to even buy him out from the very beginning. And this is a young man that had never been to jail before. So they treated him as though he was a hardened criminal from the jump. It was not something like, well, we're going to just say he's innocent until proven guilty. He was already guilty. He was already guilty, but you guys don't even have the evidence. So just from my opinion, he should have been free. He should have not sat in jail for 20 years, in prison for 20 years, and missed out on his entire life. It just doesn't make any sense to me. That's why I believe it was politically motivated, because people have done worse and get out and are free walking around right now. And my brother is still in prison.
Let me ask you something just before we go. Did this verdict of any of this type back then do you believe it affected the elections one way or the other?
Can you hear?
Wait a minute. I couldn't. Okay, repeat again.
Do you believe back then, when all of this took place, the trial and everything else, that it, one, affected the election? And I may even take the question a step further. what was your grandmother's frame of mind during the time frame?
Well, actually, she's not biologically my grandmother. She's my brother's grandmother, but
Okay.
I honestly don't know. I didn't speak with her, and people loved her. So, no, it did not affect anything. We loved her. It wasn't going to affect anything, but people do things hoping that it can affect. You know, I mean, it's just the evil that men do. They didn't change anything, but, you know, if they felt like they could have, why not give it a try? I just feel like from the moment they heard who Joe was, it was just, you know, let's just go ahead and roll with this. And that's what they did. If anybody can help my brother in any kind of way, I'm just trying to be his voice today. May not have gotten everything out that I wanted. I prayed about this before we did this interview.
Well, let me ask you this. What type of, where can they reach somebody? Because you say that he doesn't have an attorney. So who can they speak to and how can they reach them if they needed to reach somebody? Is it through your Facebook or some type of number or some organization? What can the public do to assist you?
As far as anybody in the family to contact, is that what you're asking?
I mean, at this
Anyone.
point, anyone.
Yeah. Like if someone
I
wants
mean,
to
they
help,
can-
like, do they
they can-
contact you? Do they contact your mom? Like, we need to know who
Yeah.
they contact.
They can contact me or they can contact my mom. She's the number one, his number one supporter. She's paid out her money to the attorneys that have not helped. I can give you her contact information, and I'm sure she will be glad to speak with these people, whoever it may be that can help Jamie.
What's her name?
My mother's name is Paulette Beaufort.
Do you want that information to be public or can they just inbox you that information? That way, you know, it can be
Yeah.
more private.
Yeah.
Give us your Facebook page so that they can go and inbox you so that your mother don't get bombarded with random phone calls and be like, who? You know, whereas you can
Yeah.
control the conversation via inbox. Tell us how they
Yeah.
can reach out to you via Facebook page before we go ahead and wrap up.
Okay, I kind of missed a little bit of what you said, but yes, they can inbox me, and I can give them my mother's information, and they can contact
All
her.
right, what's your Facebook page? Your name for Facebook for those that
My name on Facebook is Tasha, the only one.
okay.
Thank you. Thank you for
very
sharing.
much.
Thank you for sharing your brother's story. We hope that thank you for sharing your brother's story. We hope that he will get the justice that is, you know, deserved. And we hope that the right person will hear his story. We will also be adding this information to my Facebook page tomorrow. So you can send me the information via inbox so we can let people know who to contact. And then we'll discuss this defense. We'll discuss, you know, what we talked about on the show. So we would like to thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much.
You are so welcome. When we come back, we will be wrapping up this conversation with Jamie Carson on Let's Talk with Christina Lynn on Power 108.9.
Damn, I fell asleep in the questions. That's an attorney, man. Come on, let's wrap. You got 8 minutes. Recap. Recap. Bad attorneys. That's what
Okay, talking about bad attorneys. Woo.
This is a true sign of what happens when you got money. Am I right or wrong?
I agree.
You right. You know the saying goes, they said I'd rather be
Why you
rich
talking so loud?
because you told me to.
I can hear you.
Y'all see what I go through
But
every
this
week.
is a sign of when you ain't got no money.
Are we back?
No, I don't think we back on, but we back because I want to make a statement. I need to talk about this sponsor too. Ow, ow.
No, we can.
Welcome back. You are listening to the one and only Chris Stereo and Let's Talk on Power 108.9. We were just talking to Tasha, who is Jamie Carson's sister, Cordell and I, and we were talking about how she believes he is innocent. I also want to say that this portion of the show was brought to you by Mr. West Africa, located at 415 West Court Street, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45203. Mr. West Africa can be reached at 513-684-9111. We are going to wrap up our show, and we're going to talk about attorneys and how so many people are wrongfully convicted. But I want to say, I heard a statement a while ago, and they say, I'd rather be rich and guilty than innocent and broke.
Well, I haven't heard that statement yet, but
You haven't heard it?
No, but
But it's the truth.
It is the truth. You know,
It's sad, but it's the truth.
yeah, because when you think about it, just the notion of I want to come to the defense of a lot of public defenders because they are doing the work.
Not all of them.
Well, not all of them, but as a whole, they are attorneys. First of all, let me restate that they are attorneys, but they're doing the work because a lot of times when people come to public defenders, they're coming with no money. Little or no money. Now, we do have an obligation as an attorney to aggressively defend our client. So whether that client comes to you via appointment from a court or your application, for a public defender, or by some other means, once you take upon that client, you should aggressively defend that client. Now, I believe that wholeheartedly, regardless of if it's for money or pro bono, because else don't take the client.
I think you believe it, but I don't think it's true.
It may not be true for some, but
I think it's not true for most.
What happens also in the situation is sometimes people are just overwhelmed because just based upon your statement about the rich and the poor, the rich man can afford however many attorneys he needs to fight his battle. The poor person gets the attorney he gets. Like, okay, you're free. All right, I'm taking you. So he doesn't really have opportunity to vet his attorney one way or the other. So he doesn't even know if his attorney believes in his innocence or protects the protection of his rights. When you sit with a private attorney, they're probably going to go over your goals, your outcome. Where do you want this to go? Because the rich man probably know he's guilty, but he just needs to, one, mitigate the circumstances, or two, work your hardest. I'll pay your hardest to get me off on some type of technicality, or three, paint a picture so great that the jury is going to give me some leniency.
We learned that during the OJ trial.
Right.
We learned it during the OJ trial how his dream team of attorneys were able to finesse the jury
Exactly
to come with an acquitted verdict in that case. And now when we look at stories in 2019, when we look at somebody like Meek Mill, and I'm so happy that they did the documentary about that. It talks about, and even the sister talked about how you had all these charges placed on him at this one time. And even, what was it, All of Us, If They Can See Us, that all this stuff is coming to light. But at the end of the day, if you don't have any education about the law and if you ain't got no money, it's going to be tough for you out there to win.
Right. And if you think about it, a person that can have a private attorney probably can have investigators to overcome the state and all of its team, the police, their investigators, everybody out there, the forensics files. You're working against the system when you're working against the state. Whereas as a public defender, your first time seeing that folder is when that person is right in front of you. But they are overwhelmed. But some of them are doing a really good job. But what they have is it's not enough resources.
I just came up with an idea. The state has to use the same financial resources that the defendant has. How about that?
Well, they do, because they all get paid from the state.
Right.
So if your public defender can't have all this extra stuff, neither can you as the state attorney.
Well, in theory, that is happening. But right. In theory, that is happening, because you got to realize in a criminal process, the state is required to give over the evidence that they have. But again, if somebody let's just take something simple like weed, the state has to go and get this tested, when they find drugs on somebody. Well, a poor person who has a public defender is not going to have the resources to challenge that testing on, the potential drugs that are there. Whereas a rich person says, yeah, let me get my own tester. So you can do it.
Mhm.
Both sides have the opportunity to do it, but the poor person is not going to have the resources to do it. And those things matter in the long run. So at the end of the day, the picture from the state is already painted with such a broad brush if you're Black in America, especially if you're poor in America, that you're trying to you're David trying to beat Goliath, whether you're innocent or guilty. It's just the nature of the beast.
Done. Y'all like the mic. I don't know what's wrong with my throat today. I like to mess with Michael, but thank y'all for tuning in. It has been a great show. My prayer is that Tasha and her family would just get justice for her brother, Jamie Carson, and the truth will be revealed. We are going to wrap up. You are listening to Let's Talk with Christina Land on Power 108.9. We will be back next week, which is what? August 26th.
August 26th.
August 26th at 8 p.m. And I don't know what we talking about, but we going to talk about something. All right, y'all. We out.
All right. Peace. God bless.
It's the same one. This is the Facebook that's streaming live, but this is where I see the comments and stuff. All right, y'all, I'm out.
Okay.
Bring them out. Bring them out.
It's RTL.
I was about to say,
Mhm.
and it's the states. The state has the responsibility of proving the case.
Right.
It's not the
The defendant.
The defendant. The state has to prove it.
They do have the burden of proof, but
Prove, that's what I'm looking for. But then you
Kind of burden
that
is-
state,
is being Black.